Welcome, everyone. So excited to be with you for the Leo solar month. We're going to explore a little bit, though, about the last day before the Leo solar month starts, and that happens to be the second Capricorn full moon. We had the first one at the June solstice, and we spoke about that quite a bit in the Cancer solar month as that was starting. So one of the things to keep in mind is that there's different definitions of a blue moon. It's a rare occurrence. It doesn't happen that often. And when you have two full moons in the same sign, one in the early degrees and one in the late degrees, that's rare. That doesn't happen that often. And it almost always happens when there was a full moon at the solstice or equinox, and then there's 4 full moons between that and the next seasonal cycle. In this case, it'll be the September equinox. And so I feel like this is, in a sense, like a blue moon plus an out of bounds full moon, meaning it's outside the boundaries of the sun because we're in the 19-year lunar standstill. And just something fun was that Nura and I got to be with each other in the Standing Stone Circles in Kalanesh at the June solstice. Then we were honoring and celebrating that magical moment that was happening and getting the infusion of the stones. And so what's happening tomorrow, June 21st, we're recording this on July 20th, is that there's a Capricorn full moon at 29 degrees Capricorn. That means the sun is at 29 degrees Cancer. And so we have the anaretic degrees happening with the sun and the moon. And this is really suggesting that something is completing and something new is beginning in a really spectacular way. Is that just the feeling I have about it? Plus, Pluto is within a degree of the moon at the exact full moon. And what's fascinating is here we have a Capricorn full moon at 29 degrees. And then Pluto will go retrograde back into Capricorn on September 1st at 29 degrees. And so this feels like it's a presaging or prefacing what's getting ready to happen as Pluto will make its last few weeks at the 29th degree of Capricorn, happens to also be around the time of the US election. Who knows what that's going to bring? It's been already wild and crazy here, and I try not to get into politics, but it's like just not going down that road too much because it's just too insane. But it's really speaking to the restructuring of how we do our world, how we do our government, how we do all the different pillars of our society, so to speak. You know, there's so much at stake here right now, and that how are we restructuring that? And then Pluto will station direct at 2938, I believe it is, Capricorn on October 11th, and then goes back into Aquarius on November 19th. So we have this final degree, Pluto at the final degree, being initiated, or I don't know if that's the word I'm really looking for, by this full moon. Something big is happening, something amazing is being energized. So I wanted to start with that, and then the next day the sun moves into Leo, and it's with also opposite Pluto. So we've got the Pluto conjunct the full moon, and it's opposite the sun at the same time, and then the sun will make its exact opposition to Pluto on the day it moves into Leo. July 22nd happens to be the Magdalene feast day in honor and celebration of Mary Magdalene. And there was something else, one more thing. Oh, and Mars is conjunct Sedna. Mars is moving into Gemini and is conjunct Sedna. So much going on just as we start this month. So I feel like I've been talking a while. I'm going to turn this over because I know you all have lots more cool things to say. But just to know that this timing as we start this solar month it's like a wow time. It's ending the Cancer solar month and starting the Leo solar month. It's really big. And so if you're feeling the energy, if you're feeling it and you're questioning things, it's a good time to be questioning everything. This is the time for that because our whole world is being restructured. So that's what I got to say. I'm passing it on.
I love everything, and I would love to add into the magic that I think is happening in this full moon, that is happening in a degree that connects with the end of 2020, when we have the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. And this month, we are going to have the first square that we are going to be talking about afterwards. So there is something that was seeded in December 2020, that in this full moon we can have a realization of what is it that we have been nurturing in this area. Remember that Capricorn is not just the director of a CEO of a big company, it's also the person who takes care of the culture and the structure and how we are restructuring, as Kailin was saying. And I think in here there is this responsibility of each one of us to do our part and to nurture the part of the life that we are supposed to be nurturing. And that is going to be different for each person. And the more we go within, the more we can really share without. And I think it's super interesting with the Mars moving into Gemini at the same time. Like there is this releasing of the old with Pluto in this full moon, and then the next day is just Leo season, Mars in Gemini. It's like, how can we enjoy the process of being alive and just releasing all the version of ourselves, and at the same time really be very conscious of what we are seeding in this process, because the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn takes 20 years to develop. And I always see these two planets as the areas in our lives where we can really truly take action together with Mars. Like with Pluto, with Neptune, with Uranus, there is a part of surrendering, and is like there is not so much to do. It's much more inner surrender and trust and soul level. But with Jupiter and Saturn, we are talking about really taking action in our physical reality. And I think this first square is very interesting at the same time that Pluto is coming back to Capricorn. So it's just to really invite everyone to get their diaries, get their email, WhatsApp, Instagram, and check what is it that you were doing in December 2020, close to Christmas time, and then check what has happened since then until now. And if you want to change anything, realign anything, and really put a little bit more magic into the uh, potion that you are making.
I love that. Put a little more magic in the potion. I love everything that you're both sharing about. I love, Mar, how you're really connecting this back to that Jupiter Saturn conjunction we had in 2020, and Pluto, is also there right now, really holding that alchemical cauldron to transform whatever we need to transform within ourselves now that Pluto's retrograde, to really like birth that through whatever was seated there. And I think that this full moon is such a powerful one. I mean, I personally feel like so much energy like coursing through me right now. And this is for me a reminder, maybe for other people here, it might resonate to like ground and embody, because I feel myself like wanting to kind of jump up and out. And I really am not like a caffeine drinker, but I'm like, wow, I want like coffee to like amp it up more, which would be like probably the worst thing possible. And so I feel, and that's when some of the medicine of Capricorn is like embodied, grounded, rooted, embodied wisdom, our wisdom that comes from our connection to the earth and our ancestors. So I'm just feeling this like reminder to kind of root down and ground in here. But I really feel this full moon, that is the moon's at 29 at the very last degree of Capricorn, and the sun is at the last degree of Cancer as well, remembering that the full moon it's holding that polarity of both signs, and that the moon is like really the light of the moon is sourced in Cancer energy. And so the whole kind of source of this full moon is reminding us to
come back to nurturance and that care. And with the moon at the last degree, the last degree of any sign, it holds the most potency of the sign, the wisdom of the sign. It's like all the accumulated wisdom of that sign, and also sometimes the accumulated or what might be left within us, the lingering kind of shadow aspects of that sign can come up when there's a 29-degree activation for transmutation. So we can kind of spiral up to the next ring of our evolutionary journey. And that's where I feel this full moon conjunct Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius, and Pluto's retrograde. It's like, it's this invitation, I feel like, to kind of transmute whatever might be lingering within us, like kind of conditioning, programming from the old paradigm. You might call it the patriarchal paradigm, the power over paradigm, whatever you want to call it. Like what conditioning might be lingering within us. I feel like this full moon really wants to transmute that. So with that Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius retrograde, so we can really start to birth something new from within that's aligned to, you might say, the Aquarian age, the new earth, this like new frequency. Kaylin, you spoke to like birthing something spectacular. I mean, for me, what I've really been noticing is like, I really feel like I'm starting to really transmute some of this like deeply ingrained conditioning for myself. That's, kind of some of the, way our culture has related to some of the Capricorn energy, not the essence, but the kind of how our culture has been relating to it, is like this productivity and linear and being linear. Like I feel like I'm really starting to transmute, like with my creation. I don't have to, like a clock, be constantly creating and producing, because that actually like really saps my creative energy when it's like, oh, I have to like clockwork, oh, get it out this week because I've not gotten something out. Like that actually really stresses me out, and it really drains my creative energy. And for the first time, really over this last year, by nature of having a baby, I've not been able to create content in a linear way like I used to do it. But really just now I've been like, I'm really at peace with it. It's like, okay, I can take a break and I'm not creating, I'm really allowing myself to be more cyclical, which is the feminine way of being, is to be cyclical, to take a break, to go within, to rest. And but with the conditioning of my thinking, I feel like I'm really starting to get a hold on that. So I'm noticing that with this full moon, and how it's allowing me to feel much more feminine, just being in surrender and the flow, to not be so linear with how I'm creating. And with this full moon, it's also, making the full moon is really making beautiful harmonious aspects with Neptune at 29 Pisces, who's in retrograde, and with Mars at 0 Gemini. And so it's really like weaving in the by sign, Gemini and Pisces square. So it's actually creating this beautiful integration I'm sensing with the Gemini Pisces kind of squaring. And so what I'm really, the message to me is like, this full moon can really give us some clarity and insight how to take like grounded Capricorn inspired action, Mars at 0 Gemini, that's really like spirit led or intuitive led or led by something higher. It's like weaving the logic with the intuition. And there's something really powerful. Mars is also, there's a Pleiadian activation with Mars at 0 Gemini conjunct or aligned to Alcyon of the Pleiades, at least by degree. And so there's something really powerful about connecting with that higher dream, Neptune at 29 Pisces, and taking like this grounded, inspired action with Mars at 0 Gemini, the groundedness with that Capricorn energy, and the Gemini qualities that bring a light touch, a lightness, a playfulness. There's something about breaking free of this old paradigm that says you have to over effort and like push, there's something about like releasing that old Mars way of like brute force. And it's like, things can be playful and flowy and light. And yeah, I'm a little bit all over the place, but I feel like that Neptune's on my Mercury right now. So I'm just surrendering to it.
But that's also part of the beauty, right? I mean, the fairy energy of Gemini, so strong, and it is kind of like that butterfly and hummingbird animal medicine, like flitting around to like, well, what's most beautiful right now? You can't stay at the same flower forever. We have to cross-pollinate. And that's been one of my favorite words for the whole Jupiter Gemini time. I'm always a big fan when we come into a new solar season of looking at the ingress chart. So the moment that the sun enters Leo, and then you cast a chart for that moment, and there's a very powerful grand air trine energy coming right in. And then there's just a lot of aspects. So if we start with that grand air trine, it's the flow of ideas. Like whenever we have trines, it's harmony. So these planets, these celestial bodies, even these points, because the South Node is involved in that grand air trine that I'm calculating, it's this energy of the past that we're really working with the South Node and everything that we're integrating around ideas and relationships. And there might be a lot of things in our comfort zone, which I think the South Node, we can all agree, does tend to invoke that. That's really, it's getting amplified with Jupiter. And then the moon is, especially at the ingress chart, is that apex of this grand air trine. And so even though the moon is not going to stay there for the whole month, that setting of that energy will last for the whole month. So it will be a big theme of this, bringing Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius energy together. The three air signs, they have such a different approach, each of them, but all of them a similar goal is to really get ideas and fresh air moving. So challenging our ideas, challenging our thoughts and beliefs, absolutely a big theme this month. And even how we feel about everything and what we're emotionally attached to, because Moon in Aquarius, it can be, all of the fixed signs can have that strong, like, I want to hold on to this. There's sustaining energies. And so even having the sun also in Leo opposing Pluto in Aquarius, who's also got the trine to Mars, there's all of this. It almost seems like the invitation of the mutable signs, perhaps, like coaxing the fixed signs into more playfulness, like both Mars and Jupiter saying to both Pluto and the sun, to, I don't know if lighten up is the word, because that maybe sounds gaslighting to some of the collective experience, but to stay curious, because when you're faced with those really hard things happening, and it's very easy to kind of go into this fixed place that might not necessarily serve you, right? Like these fixed ideas like, oh, this is what always happens. And that's actually sometimes how we more deeply entrench ourselves in a negative experience, versus there's the energy of possibility with the mutable signs. It's like, well, if I maybe just change up this one little detail, like what else is possible for me? And that is our point of power. So especially if we're talking about Mars Pluto, it's like, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to take action on? That's that Mars piece. But then Pluto is always reminding us, well, where is our power? And we have to bring our whole selves to access that. We have to connect with our soul to access true power. Otherwise, it's kind of involved in weird power games. But like our true power and our true influence, and what is really important for us, it really comes from accessing deep, deep down. And sometimes we do need change. We need something maybe even a little irritating to happen to kind of coax us out of our comfort zones. So that seems to be a big energy as we just open up into the month of the entirety of Leo season. So we've got a lot, like, aspects equal action, and almost everything is forming an aspect, a really, really hard, intense aspect, or soft aspect, but exact upon the ingress. Like we also have Mercury perfectly square Uranus upon the ingress of the sun into Leo, which is really fascinating because that's also where Mercury will have the Cazimi almost a month later at the same degree, opening up the month that way. So Mercury and Uranus, it's absolute liberation of our thought form, but again, from these fixed signs. So these are like stubborn thought forms that have been around for a very long time, that it's almost easy to fall deeper into our biases, I think, when we're working with fixed signs. So there's a big liberation of all of that. And so I'm very excited to see what this looks like on the collective. I can certainly see how it's influencing me already personally. Very similar to you, Jamie. I'm like, who am I? I don't know. Just going with that flow.
It's so much the time to be questioning. One of the things I'd like to say about fixed signs is I like to think of the whether if it's the cardinal signs, they're in service to community or in service to others. And if it's the fixed sign, they're in service to soul, your own self-exploration and taking that deeper dive into your soul. And if it's the mutable signs, it's in service to spirit. And so so if we add that understanding to it, then we think about that deeper dive into our soul. What is, and I feel like there's so many things happening that are getting us to question, like, what is that for me? I love how you said that. And, you know, the not Pluto, Uranus and Mercury piece as we start the month. And then on July 26th, we're going to have Chiron go retrograde in Aries, and it's coming back to the USA Chiron for a second pass. And so one of the things that's happening in the United States is we're in a Chiron return, and that's healing the wounds. That's about healing, first being able to see what the wounds are. And I think that's what's happening is we're really seeing how deep they go. It's kind of scary and it's pretty intense, and the politics are just crazy. But that's what needs to happen in order for there to be that shamanic healing process that can take place. And so we are experiencing it in a personal sense as well as a collective sense. And then the next day the moon will be with Chiron, so it's going to amplify that station point, because whenever a planet's stationing, it's stopped, it's not moving. From our perspective, the planets never stop moving. They just look like they're not moving from our perspective. And of course, we will have Mercury going retrograde in early August, and it'll be in that pause or that station place where it feels like it's not really moving. But the reality is that the planets never go backwards. They are always going forward. It's just that what we're seeing is that it looks like they're going to start retracing the same part of the sky they just crossed. And also Venus will trine Chiron on July 30th, and then on August 2nd, Venus will square Uranus. And we're getting ready for the new moon, and the first Venus moon conjunction at the root chakra gate, as Venus is now. Hopefully people have been able to see her in the evening sky, and for sure by early August, you should be able to see her with the crescent new moon in at 1 degree Virgo. And this is a powerful rising up of the divine feminine in her Leo cycle. And she rose up into the evening sky in the sign of Leo, and she shifts into Virgo on what day was it? August 4th, she's shifting in, and then on August 5th, she's conjuncting the moon. So this is right with the star Regulus, the heart of the lion. And so here we are with the expression of the feminine reclaiming her sovereignty, her divinity and her sovereignty, and her power as a light being, as one who emanates and radiates love and light. And so this is very exciting that she's with Regulus, because what more perfect star could she be with for that journey to, as she starts to reclaim these parts of herself. So there's that piece. And then we'll have the cross quarter. August 6th will be exact, but 5, 6, 7, it's within the window, oftentimes the 8th. Sometimes it's on the also still on the 8th, and that is often considered the 8-8 Lion's Gate, though the sun actually isn't in the constellation of the Lion, even though it's in the seasonal sign of Leo. And I'll put in the show notes a video I did about this. I like to call it the 8-8 Infinity Time Gate rather than the Lion's Gate, because I think it's a little broader way of looking at it, and it's based on a date from a calendar that was made up by humans. And over time, it's like, oh, there may be time, like in a couple thousand years, that it's not even in the seasonal sign of Leo anymore when it's 8-8. So that's based on what people think it is at this time. So I just wanted to put that in there. And then we will have, what was the other thing I wanted to mention? I guess that's it for now. I'll let you all take it over and fill in the pieces that I didn't cover.
Well, also that day that Venus is with the moon at her first root chakra gate, Mercury also stations retrograde. So just to add to that beautiful cocktail. of what you shared. And I do feel like what Mercury is doing from it's at 4 degrees Virgo where he stations retrograde, and then he goes back to, I think it's about 21 Leo. And so this whole, 10, 14-ish degrees of the end of Leo and the beginning of Virgo, and then again corresponding with Regulus, like this is going to be a theme that we're really thinking about. And Mercury, when he's in the pre-retrograde shadow phase to the retrograde itself to then the post-retrograde shadow phase, if you have an aspect in your chart or a planet there, it's getting activated 3 times. And so there's always this really deep digging into that. So I say yes, like the more we can dig deep into our sovereignty, and especially with the energy of Virgo kind of leading the way, the temple keeper and the priestess, and then how you combine that with Leo, it's being seen for your creations, and both internally and if is required externally. But that's not always the case. Like there's so many people who are so profoundly creative that maybe their work is never seen or they're not visible in the typical traditional sense that we think of with Leo or fame, or kind of like being out there, being bold in a certain way. So I feel like that might be a big piece of the reclamation too. It's like, how do I get to just be that sovereign creator in my own life and decide like, well, when is it even needed for this to be shared with somebody else, or when is it really just for me? I know for myself, I've had to work a lot with the mantra, my own gaze is enough. Like, what if I'm the only person that sees this beautiful art or this poem that I wrote or created? And like, would it still be enough? And I think those are the kinds of questions when you combine Virgo, which some of the times the shadow is like enoughness and self-criticism, things like that, but then really wanting to just come into your excellence rather than perfection. And then Leo, it's like wanting to be seen, but why do I want to be seen? Like, what is it about? Who actually needs to see what it is that I'm creating? So I feel like all of this combined also with Venus, who I think is really an initiator of our creative and relational journey, it's important to kind of blend all of these questions together so that we're not I guess, acting from this idea of how we think we are supposed to be creating and sharing ourselves with the world. And I think that's one of the most empowering things, at least it has been for me, because then I can get even more clear on, well, why am I doing this? Like, why is this even important to me? I already feel it. I'm like getting emotional. I'm like, all the things that I'm doing, why am I doing it? And of course, this is all at the root of my chart, all this energy. So it's like nadir energy, like pulling me deep down and in. So that's another piece. Like if you have Leo at the bottom, the nadir of your chart, not in the 10th house, right? Like you're going to have a very different experience of what needs to be seen. So it's just that reminder, no one size fits all. It's all, how is it happening in the world, but also how is it happening for you? And Virgo is such a deep personal inward sign as well. And yeah, so I think it's a beautiful combination when we have Virgo and Leo working together that way. It could be really nice. Like this is where I think you come into your own true creative excellence.
Oh, I love that you're speaking to this and the Mercury retrograde, because I feel like I think one of the most interesting things about Leo season, I'm always very tuned into the retrogrades, is the Mercury Cazimi, where Mercury meets the Sun on, it's August 18th or 19th. It's right with the full moon. I can't remember.
It's the 18th.
18th. Okay. I'm like, everything. I'm like, I have Neptune on my Mercury right now. I cannot remember a thing. But the Mercury Cazimi is at 26 Leo, and it's right with Vesta at 27 Leo. And Vesta's doing a lot that's very interesting this Leo season. I just want to like honor Vesta and the archetype within us that is Vesta, that she is, she's the goddess of the home, the hearth. She represents our sacred flame and our devotion, our commitment to our sacred flame. Like what is worth our devotion? Like what do we find so sacred that we're like so devoted to and committed to? And she's, traveling, and she's in the sign of Leo right now. So this is our creativity, our creative expression, being devoted to our light and emanating and shining our light out into the world, maybe being in devotion to our authenticity. Leo is being fully expressed just as we are, being willing to be in our uniqueness and our authenticity. And as the sun comes to oppose Pluto at the beginning of this Leo season, we've already had Pluto oppositions with Venus and Mercury already. It's like, can we be courageous enough to just be embodied in our authenticity, being willing to be unique, being willing to be different when there's so much societal pressure to conform and to fit in and be like part of the hive mind? Can we be willing to be just exactly who we are, and the power that comes from just being embodied, exactly being fully expressed in whatever is authentic to us in the moment? There's a lot of power there to just actually being embodied as ourselves. There's a lot of power and empowerment that comes from that. But the Mercury Cazimi conjunct Vesta, which is also square to Uranus. I mean, you already spoke to it, Nura, about the liberation of our mind. And I think there's something that I was thinking about as you were sharing, Nura, that's so interesting, because Vesta, if I'm like correct in remembering my mythology, Vesta, well, she had a following. She didn't necessarily like have in mythology like all the glamour that maybe some of the other goddesses had. Like there aren't as many like statues and things that were like devoted to her. There's like this humbleness to Vesta, that she's just devoted to what's sacred. She does represent the priestess pathway and the initiation to the priestess pathway. And to me, like Vesta's really like, it's like the real, like, yes, and I love, like, right, Leo. I'm in a Leo rising. Like it can feel so empowering to really like, dress the part in a way that resonates to you, but also like there can be this like dressing the part is just dressing the part. It doesn't mean there's like really substance to it. And to me, like Vesta is about like, can you actually like embody that energy without the beautiful dress and the adornments and all those things? Like she actually is that pure, like sacred devotion to what are we devoted to, that is like that we hold so sacred, so near and dear. And I think there is something that you kind of touched on, Nura, about like can we just create for ourselves? And through doing that, it's like those that are meant to see it will see it. And there's something too about like with Mercury, this Mercury retrograde, and Leo is, what are we, Leo is a sign of creativity and creative expression, and we're creating in every single moment, regardless if we think we're doing something that's like actually creative, right? We create by our way of being, we create by our thoughts, by our words. And so there's something about what reality are we creating for ourselves through our mind. And when that's square to Uranus, there's this liberation of where have we maybe been creating through self-limiting beliefs, like our shadow or our unconscious, to liberate ourselves from that, to create more consciously and more intentionally, and to create from within with our way of thinking, our perception, our words, and to actually be in devotion to what we are creating with our perception and our thoughts and our words.
I love all of that. And especially like every time we got into creativity, and like the months that we have these energies active are like really joyful. And I feel with everything that we have been sharing with creativity and with our expression, I will say that also sharing without expectations. And I will highlight that for the new moon in Leo, the 4th of August, at least here in Europe. I'm not sure if it's the same day there. And is trining the nodes and sextiling the nodal axis. And then it's also sextile Jupiter and Mars in Gemini. So it's like, don't take yourself so seriously. Like if you write a poem and you just share in media and nobody gives you a like, it's okay. It's just the fact that you were sharing that poem for you is healing and is moving the energies. And of course, you can also paint something for your own pleasure. But I keep seeing in this energy that there is a voice that is needed to be shared with others, with Gemini and Leo. But releasing the perfectionist part of it. Like it needs to be raw, it needs to be authentic, and without editing, without trying to look in a certain way. You just look the way you feel it, and if nobody likes it, it's fine. I feel that's the return of this Venus coming back from like the root and then the sacral. And in Leo, it's like you need to be expressive just for yourself and then sharing without expecting that anybody is telling you anything, either good or bad, because that's their own story. And I feel that is a part, but there is some, and I love that Nura were saying that Leo is in the bottom of the chart. In my case, it's in my 10th house, and I have my North Node in Leo. And I always feel in summer this push to really create and share, because there is such a vulnerable feeling and emotion when we share something that has been creating from our hearts. And for instance, for me, I keep doing videos in YouTube. I don't have problems like being on camera. I dance in the camera. But every time that I share anything from my book, that I wrote a novel, that feels really, really intimate. And that's the place where I need to go. Like, I know, I keep knowing, but I like, okay, let's do something else instead of sharing that part, because it feels more personal, but at the same time is part of the process. So I feel that even sometimes if we just inspire one person, it's worth it to be shared with others. Because as a writer myself, like there is something about me writing for myself, and there is something about sharing that voice with others, because that book doesn't belong to me anymore. The book that is read about from someone else, even if I wrote the book, is not my book, is their experience of those words. And there is such a sacred space in that, like releasing our creative projects and allowing them to have their life on their own, because whoever they need to see it, or whoever they need to be inspired by your creations, is their own experience of that creation. So I think that is very active in the whole month. And of course, according to our chart, there will be a more inner, as Nora was saying, like if it's more in the bottom, it's more like that gestation process. If you have Leo, Gemini more up in your chart, it will be more about sharing outside. And that's the part that is so magical with astrology, that we don't have the same experience of the same energy, and like we are all different and unique. And that I think is also a thread in this month, that we keep trying to cut our magnificence in order to fit in. And we feel like I keep seeing with this Venus cycle a white lion that is like completely different, because how many white lions are in the world? And that's the guide. It's like you have to be this white lion, and it comes masculine. I don't understand why, because it's related to the Venus cycle, but it's saying like, there are more white lions and lioness in the world, but you need to embrace this energy of being different and not trying to fit in order to be loved. And then more unicorns and dragons and mermaids and fairies will come up in the surface, and that's your tribe. Like your tribe is not the gray people who are just like going to the office every day without magic. It's like you go to the office, but you are a fairy, and you bring the fairy kingdom into your office and whatever you do. So it's not about what you are doing with your life, it's more about how you are doing what you're doing, and how can we bring more magic into every single day in the more routine, mundane, and allow ourselves to share when we feel the push from the inside out to share. And if nobody likes it, it's fine. It was the purpose was to just release it from the system.
I love that, Mars. So good. It reminds me of when I first started writing celestial timings back in 1996. And I would get so many people criticizing, like, because I was doing it, I had a short amount of time. I didn't have anybody to read it over for me. I was a mother of four, busy mother of four. And I'd get these messages back about, well, you didn't say that right, or you misspelled this word, or and I was freaking out about that. And then finally I got over it. I'm like, I'm offering this to you for free, and why are you criticizing me? So let's be kind to each other. Let's celebrate when people are having the courage to bring their creativity into the world. So I just love that you said that. So good. And I just want to say that let's just wrap this up with anything that you want to say. And I want to follow up on what you were saying, Jamie, about devotion. There's another way of saying what we devote our energy to is we're voting for our reality. What actions we're taking, we are voting for the reality we are living in. And so how are we voting for our reality? How are we showing up to do that? So I want to leave us with that idea. And then also, if you're someplace in the world where there's an election taking place, go vote. Even if you don't agree with everybody, you can write in people, you can do something, but take the action to engage so that we are actively changing the world we live in. So
I would love to share in what you were saying, Kalin, about being grateful for people who are putting themselves out there. That's something that for me is in the case that if there is anybody who is feeling this pull, but they are like afraid of the critique and everything. It's like every time I have a comment that I don't like in anything I share, I delete. That's it. I'm like, I'm giving this for free. Nobody, like, you are not even part of my paid programs. At least be grateful and thank me. Like, generally, in the few years that I've been doing this, everyone has been amazing. But a few comments that I felt like constricted and like, delete. This is my home. And that's it. Like and there is this freedom. So I think that is also a part of it that is very important, that we have that freedom to delete anything that we don't want in our environment. And I just would like to share that part of the 14th and 15th with Mars, Jupiter, and then Jupiter squaring Saturn with this Pisces, Gemini square, that I feel they are really powerful at the end of the month to really say, what is in my dream and how can I bring more magic into my daily life?
Oh, I love that. And Mara, I just want to share when you were sharing at the end of your the last show, wow, you're on fire. Like I love it. And I love that you spoke to the Mars Mars Jupiter conjunction on August 14th, because I feel like that connects into actually even going back to, I believe it was April 20th of this year, we had the Jupiter Uranus conjunction, which really is this it's, you know, this liberation that's catalyzing, starting a new cycle to, you know, really, like, to me, it's about grounding in our higher vision and what is the liberation needed to do that. And then we just had, I believe it was July 15th, we had the Mars Uranus conjunction, which was like kind of the next step. Okay, now what needed to shift in our life to like really liberate and bring in that grounded action to kind of like shake up some of our stagnant energy. It's kind of a, you know, many of them feeling like a chaotic kind of energy, also really like wildly inspiring. We might still have throughout this month things rippling, like maybe out of the blue, unexpected opportunities to take action on from what was kind of stirred up with that Mars Uranus conjunction. Like it's a really there could be like fast, exciting change actually rippling through over this next month from that. Things aren't just like the day of the conjunction. And then now that Mars has traveled from Mars Uranus, that July 15th, I believe, going to August 14th, now Mars Jupiter, I feel like it's actually Mars, the planet of action. Like Mars can be like a igniter, right? I feel like it's actually even tying back to something from April 20th that kind of got seeded. And now that Mars is with Jupiter, it's like I think there can be a lot of Jupiter can bring just synchronicity, right place, right timing. And Gemini, it's like, go out, like listen to your, and I love Gemini energy for me is so much about like kind of playing the intuition game. It's like when you like get the intuition, oh, go to this coffee shop or go here or there, you know, Gemini that connects us out in the world, like listen to your intuition, because there might be some unexpected thing coming to our life. They're kind of getting out and socializing and just being like out and about in the world, like a social butterfly. And so, yeah, I just wanted to kind of connect all that back to April 20th as well.
That's so good. I'm glad you brought all of that in, Maud and Jamie. And this has been so wonderful. I'm just always so grateful for everybody. And I think my biggest takeaway offering, something I'm also receiving for myself, is just to keep it simple. It's like if I'm in a place of overwhelm, if I'm in a place of questioning everything in some moments, come back to just leading with the heart. Just can I just continually come back to what I'm most devoted to? And I don't even always have to have the language to be able to explain what that means or what that looks like, but how do I keep it simple and lead with the heart? And I think that's a beautiful way to come into this Leo season.
Oh, love that so much. So from our hearts to yours, we hope you have a great Leo season. And yeah, it's not working for any of us right now. Oh, well. How fun. All right. So bye, everybody. We'll see you next time.